All right, let's talk about teeth. You can't chew without them. Pretty hard to digest things without them. Together, all the teeth in your mouth are called dentition. We can actually tell a lot about a person or a species of animal based on their dentition. What kind of teeth do they have and in what order? That actually tells us a lot about a creature. So humans have a lot of different teeth because we eat a lot of different foods. Animals like elephants that just eat, for example, grasses and leaves, they just have grinding teeth. The parts of the tooth, starting at the top, we have the crown. It is made out of enamel, which is the hardest substance in the body. It is even harder than bone. Now, on a test, if I say, name this part of the tooth, please say crown. If I ask you what it's made out of enamel, but what it's called is the crown. The next part where the tooth narrows a little bit, that's called the neck. And that is usually covered by the gums, although sometimes as people get older, their gums start to recede and the neck becomes a little more visible. If too much of the neck becomes visible, your teeth are going to be very sensitive because this part doesn't have the protective enamel and the nerves are closer to the surface. Finally, the root is the part that anchors the tooth into the bone. And the bone is anchored with these tiny little periodontal ligaments. The name just means around the tooth. Little tiny ligaments that anchor tooth into the dental alveolus. And you remember the alveolar processes on the mandible and the maxilla. These are the alveoli, the little pockets in those processes on those bones. And that's where the teeth sit. That's what I mean. All right. The enamel forms the crown. It's the topmost layer of the tooth. Just under it, you see there's this dark layer, and that is called cementum. That's a tough layer around the root. The most of the root is made of something called dentin, which is also harder than bone. It's not quite as hard as the enamel, but it is harder than the bone. And then the pulp cavity is this center portion, and that is where the blood vessels and the nerves travel. So yes, the tooth itself does have a blood supply to support all of these tissues and structures. The root canal is this structure here that runs down through the center of the root, and it opens at the bottom at an apical foramen. Apical comes from the root for apex, so the tip. Again, we have a triangle with its tip on the bottom. So the apical foramen is this hole at the tip, and the blood vessels and the nerves enter and leave through that apical foramen at the end of the root canal. Now you're wondering, root canal, hang on, I thought that was a surgery. Why, yes, it is. A root canal surgery or therapy is done when someone has a really bad cavity or trauma to a tooth. You could have fallen, for example, and broken a tooth. A root canal is necessary when the damage goes below the crown and into the root, especially if it gets as far as the pulp cavity. So here we have a cavity that has gotten down into the pulp. The pulp itself is infected. That's going to hurt like heck. And then it's actually created an abscess down here, a swelling. So what the dentist is going to do is they're going to dig out and drill out all of that decay and make a nice smooth opening. And then they actually drill out and file out all of the living tissue inside the pulp. All of the blood vessels, all of the nerves, all of that is going to be removed. They clean out the channels and then they fill it with a special cement. And then they fill the opening with filling material, which is a special dental material. And then they put a new crown on top. Occasionally they have to put a post in to help anchor the tooth into the bone. Usually that isn't necessary, but sometimes it is depending on the damage. And then they put a new crown on top, and now you have a new tooth. Now this tooth isn't going to have blood supply anymore, so it's going to be less sensitive than other teeth, but it will still be functional and it will still be a healthy tooth. Now your baby teeth, the ones that you get as your kid, those are called your deciduous teeth. They start coming in at about 7 months old, 7 to 9 months. There's a lot of variation here. And then they emerge front to back, front and bottom, over the next couple of years. And then the second molars are the last of the deciduous teeth that erupt. While the deciduous teeth, the baby teeth, are showing, the adult teeth are formed in the jaw and they're just waiting to erupt. So this x-ray shows all of that. The permanent teeth, these will eventually replace the deciduous teeth, and then the final tooth to erupt is going to be the third molar, this one back here, and that one's going to erupt usually when somebody is a teen, sometimes later into your 20s. These are the ages at which the adult teeth or the permanent teeth erupt. So I don't need you to know the ages for all of these eruptions. What I do want you to know are the types of teeth. So you've got 2 central incisors and 2 lateral incisors, top and bottom. You've got a canine next to each of the incisors, so 4 total canines. Canines, these are the ones that are really long and sharp in a lot of animals, especially predators, but also even vegetable eaters like gorillas. Gorillas are herbivores, but they do have really big canines that they actually use just to display to each other. The premolars come next. Premolars have 1, sometimes 2 roots. Molars have 2 or 3 roots, occasionally 4. Yeah, some people are weird. And then, of course, that third molar is the last one to come in. So let's review very quickly. The crown is the top. It's made of enamel. The neck sits inside, just below the gingiva. The root is mostly made of dentin and filled with a root canal. There is this little layer of cementum between the root and the enamel, or the root and the bone. The root is anchored to the bone with periodontal ligaments, and the hole at the bottom is the dental apical foramen, where the root canal exits at the bottom of the dental alveolus. So that's your tooth. And then here's what I want you to know about the teeth. I just realized I labeled this one wrong. That's a molar, not a premolar. Incisors, canine, premolar, and molars, top and bottom. And I do want you to be able to identify the different kinds of teeth. Up next, the esophagus.